Welcome to Sanity Check. I'm Jack. I haven't done broadcasting in a long time, but after Trump won the second time, I created a page called Sanity Check, this page. For reasons I'll explain in a minute if it isn't already obvious to you. And then I had a year's worth of technical difficulties. I don't want to talk about it. I want to talk about how many people are justifying extrajudicial unalivings in our own streets or in boats in the Caribbean, or arrests for no reasons with no clear process. Frankly, there's too much to talk about, and that's why I made the channel. That's why this show is set up for easy turnover, so that when I have something to report or talk about, I can. This channel is about something very simple, but which is constantly under attack, all too fleeting, or deprived from us altogether: the nature of reality. Many historians have argued that the true genius behind the Nazi movement wasn't Adolf Hitler, but Joseph Goebbels, the minister of propaganda. Whereas Hitler was a passionate orator, Goebbels knew how to utilize emerging media to shape the narrative to the public. Trump is not Hitler. He's a terrible orator, and his only fixed ideology is rooted in his own self-obsessed personality. While he does share that with a ton of totalitarian leaders, and it does give rise to some very gross white supremacy in him, he's more of an opportunist than an ideologue. Although his former chief of staff, John Kelly, called him a fascist to his core, I think his unique brand of state worship only results when he himself is clothed in the powers of the state. And notably for our purpose, he's also a self-deluded liar and a savant of modern political media. His every public move is geared towards manipulating the news cycle, not by carefully shaping a narrative to the public. It's often not that careful, but by utilizing shock doctrine. In her 2007 book, The Shock Doctrine: The Rise of Disaster Capitalism, Naomi Klein outlines how political actors push through popular deregulation and privatization policies by exploiting the chaos of natural disasters and wars. She described this as shock therapy, which economically benefits corporate interests at the expense of ordinary citizens who are too distracted and overwhelmed to resist effectively. This is Donald Trump's political wheelhouse, either consciously or unconsciously, and certainly also being used as a tool for more adept actors. Trump overwhelms the system of resistance with every contemptible action or statement he thinks he can get away with. Since enough of these are actually damaging, he essentially conditions us, inflicting his undiagnosed attention deficit disorder upon the public. I'm not an expert myself, but a fellow traveler, and it's been rough on my people. This way he can tightly control the narrative for his loyalists, roughly 30% of the country, and create a tone of Trump fatigue, helplessness, and nihilism for the rest of us. This is also how he's become the foremost political agent of our age. So in this show, we're going to weed through it all. The propaganda, the videos, the hot button issues, war, ideology, race, identity. We will plant markers of solid ground in the storm, examine how and why the news cycle is being manipulated, and talk about what we can do about it. We're also going to engage the opposition: Trump supporters, anti-vaxxers, Zionists who defend Israel's activities, and we will engage with a range of experts and activists that can deepen our understanding of things. But for now, let's just start where we are and what we know, because it's genuinely disorienting. Some of this you'll know, some you won't. That's okay, bear with me. That's what this channel is about, getting the record straight. So, what has happened this year? Well, a lot. And it's only been 30 days. To be clear-eyed on it, we have to look at the end of last year. The Epstein Files Transparency Act was signed into law on November 19th, 2025 by President Donald J. Trump. It requires the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to release all files pertaining to the prosecution of Jeffrey Epstein. So why was this law necessary? Well, after expressing support for the files release in every interview he did for his 2024 run, Donald Trump increasingly signaled his desire not to do so once in office. This was as Pam Bondi and Director of the FBI Kash Patel were starting to make statements attempting to tamp down public pressure. and after former ally Elon Musk tweeted that Trump himself was in the Epstein files. Trump was actively whipping votes against the passing of this law, eventually losing some of his staunchest supporters like Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. His entire administration was giving the same messaging about protecting victims. But when it became clear that all of the known victims universally were demanding transparency and that they didn't, in fact, have the votes, Trump did an about-face and endorsed the legislation. What they then put out was a heavily redacted document that was clearly in violation of the law and even actively attempted to redact more after the fact. They saw some photograph in a picture of Epstein's desk of Donald Trump with a slew of girls, women, possibly victims, redacted it, then unredacted it once they saw people already had it. So now, realizing the cat is out of the bag, they unredacted some of it, with an advisory saying that it contained untrue and sensationalist claims. And trigger warning, and I'm just going to redact some of this myself in real time because I'm still unsure about the rules here, but what the latest unredactions actually contained was direct accusations against the president, which, if true, would implicate him in child trafficking, repeatedly paying to redacted children, 13-year-old girls himself, assisting in the redacted of an infant, a newborn daughter of one of the victims, and being present when her body was disposed of in Lake Michigan. Another victim allegedly got her head redacted off, which those at the scene said couldn't have been self-inflicted, but ultimately was ruled to be after accusing Trump and Epstein of redacted her and saying she was scared of what might happen if she goes to the police, according to a driver. And for when they dropped these files, because December 19th, 2025 was a Friday at the beginning of a holiday break. Both Christmas and New Year's Eve were on Wednesdays, meaning they essentially had 2 weeks where, yeah, we'd hear about this, but mainly those of us who pay attention to this sort of thing, and mostly from third-party independent sources like this, so probably not as base. And then after these 2 weeks, on January 3rd, a Saturday, the U.S. kidnapped Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, leaving the rest of his government intact, which nonetheless is illegal under international law and an act of war. So the U.S. military, after extrajudicially redacted over 100 people on boats off the coast of Venezuela for months last year, carried out this operation based on charges against Maduro for narco-terrorism, accusing him of conspiring to import tons of cocaine in the U.S. It should be noted that despite certain rhetoric from the administration to the contrary, Venezuela does not produce fentanyl, and very little cocaine comes into the U.S. from there. There's much more of a market for Venezuelan cocaine in Europe. I'll make another video about the complex problems in Venezuela and Maduro's complicity in them, because there's a lot there, but at this time, that seems like a charge which, let's say, strains credulity. Maduro has pleaded not guilty and correctly identified his capture as a kidnapping. Now, you have to ask the question, if that wasn't the end of the holiday break, on the day the DOJ was supposed to explain their Epstein file redactions, would Maduro still be in Venezuela today? Well, especially with all the grand claims, all lies that Donald Trump made publicly afterwards, sure seems like it. It was a Hail Mary and he was going to make it count. He claimed that we're going to take over Venezuela, that we're going to control the oil, that we're going to free the people. Again, all lies. Oil executives have made it clear to him that they consider this oil to be uninvestable for them. This was just a kidnapping of a head of state whose vice president had already been sworn in by Monday and rightly condemned our actions. So there's media manipulation and shock therapy like that, where Trump just creates a crisis on a whim to dominate news cycles when it's convenient. His obsession with acquiring Greenland was an example of this, a position where just last week he made a fool out of all of us at the World Economic Forum in Davos and has seriously weakened U.S. international hegemony. And then there's the crises that inevitably result from horrific domestic policy, like the redacted of Renee Good on January 7th, like the arrest of children like 5-year-old Liam Ramos on January 20th, and the redacted of Alex Pretti on January 24th. I'll do yet another, well, probably several videos examining exactly what's going on with ICE right now, but long story short, everyone in the administration is bald-faced lying through their teeth about everything that we can clearly see on video. The governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, perhaps should get credit for being the first elected official to publicly take on ICE, identifying this agency as bad guys with bad intentions that Donald Trump uses to target his preferred city that month. As such, he also called on citizens to legally observe and record with their phones. If you look at all the worst behavior by ICE agents, it stems from them not liking their operations being exposed. The reason is twofold. First off, instead of almost exclusively going after those immigrants with criminal records like the Biden or Obama administrations were, they seem to be primarily targeting immigrants who are in the middle of legal processes and are here legally. The strategy seems to be to keep these people incarcerated and in bad conditions until they self-deport, as evidenced by ICE stopping payments to outside healthcare providers back in October. This means that they're going after and disappearing people's neighbors, camping out outside of schools, courts, Home Depots, specifically picking up peaceful, legal immigrants, many of them refugees who are trying to work and become citizens or green card holders the right way. Contrary to Donald Trump's rhetoric, these are the vast majority of immigrants. On average, immigrants commit less crime than U.S. citizens and improve communities they enter by practically every economic metric. So this shakes out to ICE essentially being ordered to harass virtually everyone around their operations, particularly black and brown folks. They're on the back end of a recruitment blitz too, so these almost impossible to train for orders are carried out by untrained, probably aggrieved, politicized recruits, some of whom couldn't have had more than a year of training for that position. So the other reason that they do not like being recorded is because when something goes wrong in a situation that was always going to, we have very good evidence of what happened and know exactly when and how their bosses are lying. Which perhaps to see what they could get away with, many of these events are test balloons, perhaps to signal solidarity with the agents acting out their increasingly authoritarian orders, they did consistently. Kristi Noem called Renee Good a domestic terrorist, that she was trying to run over Jonathan Ross, when we know from every video that she was attempting to drive away. J.D. Vance said Liam Ramos's father had abandoned his son. We know from every eyewitness, including the child's superintendent and other school faculty, that his father, Adrian, a legal asylum seeker, at no point attempted to evade or obstruct ICE. That he was arrested while ICE agents denied a legal caretaker from taking Liam and made him knock on the door to his home to be used as human bait. Stephen Miller called Alex Pretti a would-be assassin who tried to redacted federal law enforcement, but anybody who saw the video knows that far from him ever taking out his gun, even when at least 4 guys had tackled him, he actually tries to help a woman who is violently shoved by an ICE agent, gets pepper sprayed, and then tackled by, as I said, like 4 to 7 agents. Then one agent pulls Pretti's gun out of his holster, possibly shoots it, possibly unintentionally. It's hard to say at this point. And then several agents shoot Pretti 10 times and let him bleed out. We still don't know the agents' identities, just that they were transferred. It also should be noted that these people recording ICE activities aren't even necessarily protesters. Alex and Renee were members of their community where ICE is causing a lot of chaos and congestion. Renee was waving people around her car and Alex was helping direct traffic. And now ICE agents have taken parents in Ypsilanti, Michigan waiting at a bus stop for their kids after school. So what do we do about it? Well, it needs to be said by Democrats and all elected officials that ICE should be abolished and that all these agents should be prosecuted. We have to start to make it clear that that's the line in the sand. Also, keep up these strategies. They're working. If you see ICE in your community, record them and make it clear to others in your community. Keep arm's length from them and make it clear to them that they are unwelcome. Join action networks. Go to protests. Join DSA, any org that makes it clear that this is not okay, that we demand accountability, and that ICE needs to be abolished. There's also been a call by activists today for a national shutdown to skip work, school, and shopping. A lot of that will happen. Some won't. If you think you can manage it, it could help. But more importantly, today, temporary short-term funding for most government agencies expires. Call your senators and tell them to vote against, at very least, any ICE funding. And as with all of this propaganda, tell the truth and share and promote videos that catch these propagandists in their lies. Trump famously said he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose any supporters. Not sure it matters anymore, but if I were Harris, I also would have publicly blamed him for what happened to George Floyd. I would have blamed him for any riots that happened subsequently. And I definitely would have blamed him for our record death numbers during the pandemic. Sure, there's January 6th and a ton of other stuff that we can pin to him directly. Incidentally, that 2-week holiday break we talked about earlier also corresponded with Jack Smith's deposition, where he lays out a lot of a rock-solid case against Donald Trump and says he knows he would have won if it were allowed to be prosecuted. But more than that, Trump is the defining political actor of our terrible ass era. And a lot of what's terrible in the world right now is because of a choice made by him. He creates a frenzied, confused, corrupt, authoritarian atmosphere where some of the most oppressive and dishonest elements of our society thrive. He's bad for our national psyche. He's corrosive to every worthwhile American value. We must all resist and use this time as a blueprint to limit the power of the executive branch in the future. And this is just for those of you that want to give me a what about after all that, because you're always there. Don't. Not the time. I was against Biden's Gaza policy too, and October 7th was the inevitable result of the Abraham Accords. I was against Obama being two-faced about immigration, extraordinary rendition, drones, but Trump is single-faced about all of it. Very much in favor and coming for dreamers, green card holders, and citizens near you. We can have that discussion, but this is something different. Both helped us get here, and they both were very different sorts of enemies. One where we could pay attention to and resist one thing at a time. But anyway, that's Sanity Check. Sorry, they'll be shorter next time. This has just been a crazy month. Like, follow, and subscribe. I'm just on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram right now. Also engage. Did I miss something? I'm sure I did. Do you think I have Trump derangement syndrome? Oh, tell me in the comments. Some of you should even come on the show so we can see who sounds more deranged. Thank you so much for listening.